This one question, I think it was meant for you. For ever since I started this podcast, I was holding on to this one question. Like someday I'm going to have somebody who I will be able to ask this question. So this question is kind of meant for you.
Okay.
Since you are an artist, how do you know the art is expensive or if art is just like gimmick? A banana on a wall with a tape gets sold for like millions.
That's true.
Something is crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy, and the whole field of modern art it's a whole thing. It's this whole thing.
Okay.
I think ultimately, if a piece of art moves you or creates some emotion in the person, and that could be anger, like why is this here? If it creates some emotion, I think it's important.
Do you always feel like if something is handcrafted, automatically it's like worth more?
I do feel like if there is value in the time that's put into it, in this technique that a individual person has. I mean, maybe that's just like the artist in me speaking, but I always find more value in something that was maybe created with time, and no other piece will look exactly the same. You know, that's something that even the imperfections that they may have in that, I feel like that just gives it more value and makes it more human.
What was your inspiration in choosing Desi Meets Design?
Sure. So I wanted to, focus on a lot of the art and some of the traditional arts just from that whole region. You know, some of it bleeds over, some of the textiles you'll see in different countries in that part. I'm more familiar with Gujarat, my personal background. So,
okay.
But I did want to keep it as broad as possible and to reach out to anyone from those areas.
Do you think people have perception Indian art is like super expensive, and is it really super expensive?
I don't think people perceive that it's super expensive, but I think one of the barriers I've been trying to break down is a lot of people feel like it's dated or it's something that our grandparents had or ancestors had. So I'm trying to bring it in more of a modern context.
So you said Gujarat's art is one of the biggest influence for you.
Yeah.
To bring it out. And Gujarat is so diverse as well. There is Kutch, there is Saurashtra, there is like so many in Ahmedabad, like so towards coming in east is much more like a little bit modern.
Yeah.
But even modern places, they want like to have a feel of like this traditional, and that's when our luxury home point that I mentioned in the beginning.
Yeah.
How do you see that? Hey guys, today, if a home or any space looks good, we just call it aesthetic. And honestly, that word gets used a lot. But the real question is, where does that aesthetic or a certain design come from? And what story is it telling? To explore that, today we have Mitesh Trambadia, aka Desi Meets Design, a digital creator known for Indian-inspired art, DIY's artwork, and wonderful home festive decors. His home reflects where he comes from. Subtle use of colors, traditional Indian elements, and pieces collected over the years. From a swing sourced from India to patterns inspired by woven saris, and I guess his favorite primary bathroom. Each space is rooted in culture, childhood, and identity. So let's get into the conversation with Mitesh Trambadia. Mitesh, welcome to the Halak Show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing this. Now, before we start, I wanted to just read some fun facts or some research that we pulled up. Maybe it should set some context of what we're going to try and get out of this session of the episode, right? So, according to Aurum PropTech, we did some research. So, in India, it takes about $6 per square foot of interiors, which means the people, if they have a 1 BHK apartment, they would spend anywhere between $5,000 to $7,000 in doing interiors, right? If it's a luxury home, they can spend upwards of $100,000, $200,000 in India, right? Worth of money to do interiors.
Definitely.
And that's more than sometimes the price of the house.
Yes.
They spend more on interiors, right? So it's just not about money. There are two spectrums of people where somebody would say, I just want $4,000 is good enough. I don't want my house to look like a hotel.
Right.
I'm happy with it being a home and I'm happy. And some are like, oh, just take all the money you want, but make it look like glorious, right? So I want to exactly, explore today what does, Desi Meets Design approach and explain to the audience how they should think about, because it's money, it's their money.
Right.
But what would an expert opinion would feel? So that's kind of area that I want to play around today with you.
Sure.
Right. So I want to start first. Like you use the word Desi Meets Design. Desi can now cover like big part of South Asia.
Right.
You can connect Asian culture and all of that, right?
Yes.
What was your inspiration in choosing Desi Meets Design?
Sure. So I wanted to, focus on a lot of the art and some of the traditional arts just from that whole region, and
Okay.
that, some of it bleeds over some of the textiles you'll see in different countries in that part.
Okay.
So I wanted to, not pigeonhole into just specific areas, but kind of cover the whole area. Obviously, I'm more familiar with Gujarat as
Okay.
my personal background. So
Okay.
but I did want to keep it as broad as possible and to reach out to anyone from those areas.
Okay, perfect. Now they say like when you start, once you start to advise or build someone, it starts with your own self,
Yeah.
and your home has been featured in places, and we wanted to like sort of try and understand a little bit about how did you come about your own house, because it looks like an Indian house in the West.
Sure. Yeah. So just a little bit about myself. I've born and raised in U.S. So never lived in India or any home in India. So
Oh, wow.
So that and from an early age had some connection to just the art and kind of the homes in India. So when even growing up, my mom would get things from India to decorate the house, and even some traditional things like Gujarati bharat or embroidery things.
Okay.
So I was surrounded by it, and then when I had my own home, that was something that was really important to me because I wanted it to feel personal. Like you walk in and you kind of know who lives here. I think that's
It represents like you.
yeah.
In a
And
way.
I think a lot of times, sometimes people will spend like you mentioned, spend lots of money, but you still know nothing about who lives there.
Right, exactly. Do you think people have perception Indian art is like super expensive, and is it really super expensive?
I don't think people perceive that it's super expensive, but I do. I mean, I think one of the barriers I've been trying to break down is a lot of people feel like it's dated or it's something that our grandparents had or ancestors had. So I'm trying to bring it in more of a modern context and kind of reimagine it, so it doesn't look like, you walked into your Dada-Dadi's home, but it's still fits.
It's a mix of like, let's say, modern heritage kind of a thing versus like traditional Indian roots, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. And do you still feel like, when people have misconception when the moment they hear there's an Indian household, so it looks like it has to have this thing.
Yeah, I think that it's true. And it varies, of course. Not every home looks the same, but there is some segment of the people that feel like, oh, this is going to look so old fashioned and too traditional, and wouldn't suit us.
Right.
So I do have to break through that image sometimes because I'm trying to say, even today you can have some pieces and still make it feel Indian, but not so traditional.
If I come and talk to you and I tell you, okay, they did something and I want you to do something like that for me, what is your reflex right away? What do you tell somebody if they say that?
Yeah, so I always try to get to know who, what is the story of this person? Because I think you can't just say somebody else's style and try to fit it in. It won't feel authentic and true to that person or the family living there. So I always just try to sit down and say, okay, why do you want that there? What speaks to you from it? What's your background and your traditions?
Why do you want it?
Why do you want it exactly? So that's really important. Even going down to just like, can you give me some pieces of art that resonate with you? What is it? The colors? Is it the art form? Where it's from? Who made it? Like, so I do like to get as much information because your home should reflect you ultimately.
Right.
I do believe that.
Right. So now that we are warmed up, I want to first focus on like the expense part of it. When people normally say, okay, I have like certain amount of extra money and I want to renovate my house, right? Automatically, people go for ease of doing it versus actually, trying to build a home.
That's right.
Where do you come into play?
So yeah, we hear that a lot. I mean, I hear like, oh, just this is a budget. We just want to redo this place to look like this.
Right, right.
That's very impersonal approach for me. I really like to, like I mentioned, get to know what you're looking for. What's the feel? What do you want to feel when you're in that room? What's the purpose going to be? Not all places in your house are going to have the same purpose. So I really try to get as much information. And when it comes to the expense, you're right. There's some people that just want it to look a certain way without their own personality because they just saw it in a catalog or some show or somewhere.
Right.
And I try to stay away from that kind of design because I just feel like, sure, you have the budget, but it just feels so impersonal. So my whole take is try to, whatever your budget is, really just try to it reflect, the person that's living there. And
right. In today's world, when artistry it's kind of going to become harder and harder.
Yeah.
With the push of AI and how visualization can come about, right? And let's say for someone like me, I have zero sense of like art when it comes to like art putting in. If something appeals to me, I don't have the depth to understand it. I just get it because it appeals to me.
That's right.
Right, and I'll just take it. So, like for example, it's like this photo of the show Office.
Right.
And I really like one of my favorite shows. Right. I just found an image where all the characters were in one frame, and I was like, okay, that's talking to me.
Sure.
So I'm going to put it up. Right.
Yeah.
How do you stay inspired or not copying from someone, but also trying to, say, okay, let's see what's happening elsewhere? Do you do that to keep your creativity?
I do.
in check?
I don't like to follow. I know a lot of designers. There's trends. There's all this that is out there in terms of trending colors, trending styles, and all that. I try. Obviously, I want to create something that's timeless for people because it shouldn't feel like, okay, in 5 years I'm going to have to redo this because it's not trendy anymore. It's not stylish. So I try to pick things that are timeless and like you said, even if they have some things they want to incorporate that they picked up or means something to them or special to them, I try to find a way that it can still go in any design,
right?
Yeah,
right.
So that's important because ultimately it's your home. You want to have things that are meaningful.
Right. How do you look at like the art from this different areas? So you said Gujarat's art is one of the biggest influence for you.
Yeah.
To bring it out, and Gujarat is so diverse as well. There is Kutch, there is Saurashtra, there is like so many in Ahmedabad, like so towards coming in east is much more like a little bit modern.
Yeah.
But even modern places, they want like to have a feel of like this traditional, and that's when our luxury home point that I mentioned in the beginning.
Yeah.
How do you see that?
Seeing, just some of the features that have been online and online magazines that do great features of some of these homes, I really gravitate to the ones that, sure, are modern, have all the amenities and everything, but then still feel very rooted in that area just with, either the art or some special features that really feel like they're from there. So,
right.
And I think they're doing a really good job in some of those areas in India and some of the new buildings and the designs of really getting that incorporated in there.
You think it's ease of access too that makes it easier?
I think so. I think some of it, yeah.
You being like miles away.
Yeah. I think it's easier over. And I think there's definitely been a resurgence that I've seen just in the maybe last 10 years, maybe with social media, I think has a big part of that too, where people are discovering, even just from India, from maybe that same area where there's art being created, they're rediscovering it and really saying that, okay, this is something that should be preserved and we should celebrate it and it should be near us in our home, So I do see that. I see a lot of other creators and artists posting their work online and Instagram, and people are discovering it, and then they're learning more about the actual art and where it came from and the history behind it. And there are some creators that are actually focus just on the artisans and the history and technique and all that. And I think it's resonating with people because I do think people want to know more. They want to learn about the culture
Right.
that they're part of.
So now this one question, I think it was meant for you. For ever since I started this podcast, I was holding on to this one question. Like someday I'm going to have somebody who I will be able to ask this question. So this question is kind of meant for you.
Okay.
And it's about, since you are an artist and I told you about about that office example, right? How do you know the art is expensive or if art is just like gimmick? A banana on a wall with a tape gets sold for like millions.
That's true.
Something is crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. And the whole field of modern art it's a whole thing. It's this whole thing.
Okay.
I think ultimately, if a piece of art moves you or creates some emotion in the person, and that could be anger, like why is this here? If it creates some emotion, I think it's important. So even
when these big painters and they paint something, and if I find hard time finding value in it,
right?
Let's say you put bunch of designs and I have to try and figure out what image it's that's telling me. There's nothing wrong with me, right?
No. So that's what I'm saying. So that just means that it's not meant for you. It's not doing anything for you. That maybe the artist had an intention that somebody understands. Maybe it's only the artist understands. Sometimes they're the only ones. But yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think it's just different things speak to different people, and some things, if it doesn't speak to you, move on. I don't think it's.
Do you get frustrated? Be honest sometimes.
Oh yeah.
When
Even
this piece is for you, man.
Even someone that enjoys, arts and museums, and even I'm just like, okay, even this is questionable.
Art makes me nervous a lot of times.
Yeah.
Some of my tastes are like, people go crazy. I'm like, what is it wrong with you? I'm like, dude, it's nice. It's talking to me.
There you go.
It's not about money. It's
Exactly.
I know what this is.
There you go. That's why I don't think anything is off limits.
Right.
And there's a whole, and now, like I said, even with like social media, there's so many subgroups. There's somebody that's going to like what you like that feels the same way. So there's always, you're going to have company no matter what.
Exactly. Yeah. In India, there is a hand created art.
Yes.
Like where they wove and do everything with the hand.
Right.
Versus then there are machineries in like Jaipur and Udaipur. When you go, they have like big handloom market, right?
Right.
And do you always feel like if something is handcrafted, automatically it's like worth more?
I do feel like if there is value in the time that's put into it and this technique that a individual person has. I mean, maybe that's just like the artist in me speaking, but I always find more value in something that was maybe created with time, and no other piece will look exactly the same. That's something that even the imperfections that they may have in that, I feel like that just gives it more value and makes it more human.
Right.
When you do get, I mean, I understand the mass-produced idea that reaches more people. It probably gets, more people to appreciate it. But that's probably the only place I feel like there's probably a difference in value.
Gotcha.
In my opinion.
Okay, no, that's great to know, right? Because it can be overwhelming. If let's say if I am a person who comes to like we already have laid the foundation. I have lesser knowledge when it comes to like art, but like if I'm coming to you, it can be overwhelming when you ask me what do you want, and I don't know what I want.
Right.
A lot of times.
Yeah.
And then you start telling me, and then that's where frustration kicks in. I'm like, no, I don't want this. But you are like, you don't have any idea what you wanted.
Right.
So maybe I'm trying to make you eliminate things that you don't want and try to sort of.
Sometimes
is it your process too? Like
that is yeah. And there are people, exactly what you said. Sometimes it's like, okay, I want something different, but I don't know exactly where to start, what to do, So sometimes I just say, go to Pinterest and pick out some pictures, some images that you like or something that resonates with you. And then we go off from there.
Right.
Sometimes it is a lot harder. It's like, okay, let's just start with a color. How about that?
In the future, when I have a bigger home and when I'm going to come to you, you will see. It can be frustrating because I'll tell you I don't know what I want, but then you show me something, I'm like, I don't want that.
But that's part of the fun,
Okay.
Because that, in that sense, you're also discovering something. I'm discovering.
I'm glad you're being nice and you said fun.
Yeah.
No, so no, very well. And I wanted to ask you this because in automatically people say that it's handcrafted. So it's
Yeah.
when in India people are trying to sell you that art. I wanted to understand if time spent on something makes it obviously more expensive versus something that's been created in machines. It looks nicer.
Right. Yeah. I will always kind of sway to the personally handcrafted items.
Okay.
I
No, fair.
yeah.
Let's talk about like royalty versus like just like an Indianness or Indian art. Rajasthan is royal. Lucknow is royal. Where do you place Gujarat in that? What's the top three if you had to choose? Where does royalty come from in India?
Like areas in India.
Areas like states. What states represents royalty
I
right
think-
away?
Yeah, Rajasthan for sure.
Rajasthan is number one. Okay.
Yeah, I think some of the areas in the south and Chettinad, I think they have the
Okay.
big mansion homes that are a lot of wood, handcrafted things like that.
Okay. We will not. We'll keep Gujarat out because Gujarat obviously will be biased because you already Gujarat is
It's
you
royal,
already.
it's always royal.
So Rajasthan is one. Chettinad and what is it about like Lucknowi? This is
Yeah,
royalty
that's
is
also-
Lucknowi.
Yeah, that's true, and I think it just comes from the history of it. The Nawabs. A lot of the royal artistry came from there too.
Right.
Some of the Jardorsi was perfected there, and the chicken curry and some of those things. So,
Right.
Yeah. So
If somebody is, let's say somebody says, okay, no, I want like my house to look like France. If I want a house might look like Italian, I'm going to import all my furniture and everything from Italy, right? Do you tend to like sway their opinion, or is it really like people are getting towards that side more?
So I mean, I try not to. Whatever I do, I don't want their house to look like a theme, like too much of a
Right.
theme.
Like a hotel.
Yeah,
You want it to be
something-
home.
Yeah, exactly. So it's fine to pick, because if you like some things from a certain place like France and pick some things, but I think I like to try and integrate multiple things together so that it just doesn't feel like it's just one
Right.
thing.
Gotcha. So, like, let's go to now a new segment, okay? Here, I knew minimalism
Right.
all my life. I have known it. Keep it minimal, keep it simple,
Right.
keep it minimal. Now, there's also something called as maximalism, which is actually not necessarily bad, right?
So I think
Can you explain what, first of all, that is?
Sure. I think maximalism is just taking everything in, everything around. So colors, textures, all collectible. So a lot of people say maximalism is just some things that have been collected over time that end up. And to be honest, I think India, like traditional Indian design, is all about maximalism. If you look at
really?
the palace,
Okay.
yeah. I don't think there's any lack of color anywhere.
Yeah, it's very colorful.
It's from the palaces, the Rajasthan you mentioned, to even all of the art, the folk art and some of the traditional arts. It's always very colorful, very detailed,
Right.
oriented. It's all about like ornamenting it and
Right.
more, more is better.
Okay,
philosophy.
okay.
So I think the essence of India is
Maximalism.
yeah,
Okay.
and I think for a while a lot of the designers were kind of shying. They wanted it to move more towards the kind of minimalism,
Okay.
modern. That's. But I see more and more now people are, they want to put out things that they've inherited from their family or collected. Small things and putting it all out there.
When someone says work, like I want this work.
Yeah.
Work is maximalism. You're trying to put like peacocks and everything in it.
Yeah,
and,
yeah. And so there is a way to do maximalism right.
Okay,
I think that's a distinction. Sometimes it can feel like it's just clutter.
Oh, right.
So, but when it's done well, I think it looks really nice. I think if you go to like a Sabyasachi showroom, that's all maximalism, and
Okay.
I think it's done really well because it's curated, but it all kind of fits together and doesn't feel like it's too
Right.
much.
When people come in and tell you, okay, I want this, and then if you deliver something, it looks nice in an idea and thought. Do people get dissatisfied when they actually see the final work? And then what do you do?
Yeah, it happens. Sometimes it's even just a paint color that they thought one thing and then
Something else comes
something
out.
else.
Yeah.
So we try to do work. Usually, we try to avoid have as much of these sorted out before we actually get to the wall. With like mood boards and samples and all that. But then there's sometimes if it's really something that they want to change, redo it.
I want to talk about this Bohemian and Pichwai style, right? Mostly in like homes or weddings, people normally use that for celebration.
Right.
Bohemian Pichwai, right? Why is that always the go-to?
So I think Bohemian is kind of like a big bucket term that a lot of designers use. And I think it just means that it's not as structured or formal. So it's more casual, a lot of different styles put together, maybe a lot of collected things that are really kind of bohemian and then colorful. So these kind of all fit with a lot of Indian, but at the same time, it's more casual. So I think it's easy to achieve when you're in the Indian context, because I think so much of Indian decor falls under that, especially for the West, bohemian decor.
Okay.
And so I think that ends up being like an easy way to make it feel Indian, but but still feel like it was curated or created.
When you're away from like India, and obviously there's a lot of nostalgic value.
Yeah.
If I have, let's say, if I have a house right now, and if you have to give like tips for me to like make this one room bring back all the memories and everything, by just not spending crazy, because I said Indian art feels like expensive when here in this part of the world.
Right.
What would you recommend we just right away do to just make for start?
Depends on what nostalgia means for you, and like you said, it doesn't have to be expensive. Sometimes it's so easy as maybe it's like a package label that you grew up with, something like a soap cover or a Parle-G wrapping, and even that can be used to make art out of it, and it I think would have meaning if that's something that is nostalgic for you. So and that I don't think would cost much at all, but it would still feel very personal. That I know why I put this here, because it makes me feel like home or something.
Right. I was going through your feed and there was a couple of images which are talking about minimalism, because you had this lantern things in yellow color, which was just a drape. Where do you suggest people use those kind of things? Where would you advise guests? Because if you said Indian art is mostly maximalism, there's a lot of when would you advise someone to go for minimalism?
It depends on what you're trying to achieve. So some people feel like maximalism is too chaotic, too overstimulating, and they want their place to feel relaxing. So a lot of times people want like their bedroom to feel more minimal, because they don't want to be overstimulated and they want something more less. And then of course there's people gravitate towards one to the other. So or in between. There's sometimes it's most of us are somewhere in between. Even myself, I think over the years swayed more to maximalism. With just wall coverings and things like that. But
even I have seen houses where just like one frame, there's a house is filled with stuff, but that one frame takes the spotlight. Moment you enter a room, if it's like a Thakurji's big murti or something, or statue or something that takes up your attraction, right?
Yeah.
Is that distracting from the?
No, I think that most like rooms should have a focal point. Whether it's
like maybe a chandelier or
or some art on the wall, or one wall, even like an entire wall. Should have where the eye kind of gets drawn to, and then everything else kind of works around it.
So that's a good thing.
That's a good thing. Yeah,
to have like a.
I think it works well.
Okay.
Just as long as it all balances out, because obviously that one area is gonna get a lot of attention, but you want it to feel balanced too.
Right. You as an artist, you're always going to be obviously hungry to show up your work. No matter how much I tell you, okay, I want this, but you'll be like, nice, let's push this because this is what I'm passionate about, right? What excites you the most? Is it space? Is it your craftsmanship stuff, or is it just the craftsmanship? Like, what excites you the most when you are looking at a project?
So I think it's anything that I will see a final result that, so sometimes if it's a project that I'm just creating, the process, I do enjoy it. It's very relaxing, but ultimately I like waiting to see the final finish, and the same thing. If I'm doing a room or something, I just want to see if what's in my head translates in real life. So that's like the best part of it, and where I feel most satisfied. So what I had in mind came true. I think that's like the best feeling.
I was being selfish here, so now I'm going to ask you, what is your creativity process as an artist? Because you're creating something from nothing.
I think everyone gets inspired from somewhere. So there's some inspiration somewhere. Maybe you heard something, saw something, and then and just from that, it just develops into I want to say this with something I make. And so I'll say, even like for my reels and stuff, the projects I share with the reels, the hardest part is actually just having that idea and having it develop into something in mind.
Right.
And then once that's there, then the actual execution is that's the fun part, and that's
Right.
that's the easy part, because then once what your materials you're going to need, techniques you're going to use, that's the relaxing part for me.
Right.
Sometimes the initial phases, I do get a little like, I want to say something, but I don't know how to get to that point. From A to B, I don't know how to get there.
Right.
And so and then there's always creative blocks and things like that always happen for in any creative field,
If there's a young artist who is trying to do something what you are doing, what would you tell them to start as if you're becoming an engineer to try and become an architect, you have to first learn your basics, get a foundation right. How would you pave a path for somebody who is like new and who wants to do this? What would be your advice?
So if you were talking about just maybe creating some art, I would say, take some classes and try different technique, because there's it's so vast. There's painting, watercolor, pottery, things like that. So I would say find things that interest you, maybe take a class and see if it really resonates with you.
Right.
And then if, maybe pick one medium that really you liked, enjoyed, and continue to work on that to make it better.
Right.
But then as you start getting better at your technique, you can automatically, I think it then starts translating to you wanting to branch out and create your own things.
Right.
But you have that foundation where, at least you know how to execute it.
DIYs. You're also one of the items on your even on Insta, and then on the blog website that we saw of yours had DIYs on it, right? Can you share something about DIYs?
Yeah, so and this is a journey that I was always doing small projects, crafts and things like that. That's not new, but it was an evolution in kind of the online space, because I started off with just kind of sharing photos of my home and maybe little projects I did. But then whenever I was showing something that I create from start to finish in 60 seconds or a minute and a half, it was really getting picked up, and people were really saving it and resonating in it. And then they were sending me recreations of their version of it, of what I shared. And I think it really struck with me that I think people, especially with so much going on, they like to see something that inspires them, that they can do, something not unreachable, that you don't get any motivation to even try, but something that that they feel they can do, and that doesn't require too many materials, too many things. So I think that's what people really craving for. I do think, especially with how hectic, there's people that feel that doing something creative, even if it's like 30 minutes, it's just as a de-stressor.
Gotcha.
Actually, I was reading somewhere that the newer, like the Gen Z, is actually going back to now, they're putting their phones down and taking up all sorts of like knitting and crocheting and all these classes to kind of as a relaxation
for an art.
Yeah. So I think and that's really been, so then I do try to do a balance of everything that I share, but really when I can make something that inspires someone else, that's like a great feeling, because then they're sending photos back of what they made, and and I think that it makes people feel good when they can create something.
My kids, they are young, but they do it too, and their imaginations are. And sometimes we just push them, this was great. Just keep trying to build, maybe break it, build it again, do something different.
Even
do what you're just let your imaginations run.
Exactly.
And then let's see what happens, right? What do you think? Do you have like number one thing that people can do in DIY, which is it looks expensive, but it's actually not? You might have given it away in that Parle-G example, for example.
Yeah. That's right. Something like that. Something that even, I've seen if you have collectibles that you've collected, and then you can even display them in so many different ways that it looks like art, but it also means something. And so something as simple as that.
And how do you spot like a good craftsmanship versus like cheap?
So I think we talked about that earlier. So definitely, like if some of the, machine made looks perfect, so you do get that. But then some of the quality isn't so great, So that's it is kind of hard to weed through it, because even sometimes I have to like do a double take and say, wait, this doesn't look right.
Right.
So it is getting harder. But I think certain art forms that have been around, and there's sometimes it's like certain families or tribes that specialize in it. If you go to the source, I feel like you get the most
Best.
authentic,
Right.
representation. Otherwise, you get confused.
Right. What do you think, according to you, is one of the biggest myth that people have about Indian decor?
That it's old-fashioned and too excessive.
Yeah, the maximalism part of it.
Maximalism part of it. Right?
That's what is the beauty about it.
Yeah,
that
that's the
sometimes
beauty,
people feel.
Yeah, and I agree. Sometimes if it is not done right and everything's just getting shoved in a room, it doesn't feel that great. But if you do it right, I think it can be really nice.
Gotcha. What color is the most premium to you, to your color palette?
So I am, again, because I gravitate towards like more rustic, like folk art and stuff. I like a rust orange.
Okay,
kind of color.
that's very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. For some reason, when I see that, I just think of Gujarati, more like earthy.
Earthy premium.
Yeah.
What color instantly is white the color that makes instantly space looks bigger, or is it actually the light that makes the space look
So
bigger?
I think light helps a lot, and I think it's a myth that not having an empty room makes it look bigger. I think if you style it right,
Okay.
having things in the room and styled well actually can make it look even bigger than just a plain white room.
Okay. When you walk into a room and when you see like certain things, do you normally tell people that okay, you can try this?
Only if they ask.
It's for is it okay?
Unless I know
I was
them
going
very
to
well.
say only if they pay, then I tell
That's
them.
true.
That's your art.
Yeah,
So you're
yeah.
bringing something to the table.
So, but yeah, if it's simple enough, then I don't mind just sharing some suggestion. If it's move this here.
If somebody wants to approach you with a question, with a query, do you write blogs? You used to write blogs for the
Yeah, I
website.
haven't.
What's your forum? How can people approach you?
So most commonly, people are approaching me through the Instagram DMs,
Okay.
and then I try to engage with them through there, and then we go to email.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then is it harder for people because you have your clientele is based in India and is based in US, right? Is it harder for you to?
So my audience is all over. Honestly, if I were to design, I prefer being able to see the space in person. So
Okay.
I've done some virtual consultations and things like that, and
Okay.
we can make it work out. But
Right.
for my sense, I always prefer to see the place
Gotcha.
in person.
And then make it.
Yeah, then
Design.
I get a sense of the space, and
Right.
sometimes you don't get all of that, and through Zoom or
Right,
just videos, and maybe with more practice or time that
Right.
I get better at it.
in the world where we are headed with so much modernization happening, everything everywhere, right? Do you feel that? Again, this is just I want to understand. This is my opinion. Do you feel that there's all these traditional roots and arts are going to be something that will be only left for the ultra wealthy after years?
So I hope that's not the case. I want it to be accessible for everyone. I mean,
Right.
ultimately that. But I think where I think I struggle with is that people don't always see the value of the art, especially if it's maybe too close to home, or maybe if it's something that you grew up with, you then take it for granted.
Right.
And,
Yes.
and I think another case of that is just some of the historic architecture, even in India, it doesn't get valued,
Right.
and preserved, displayed. And then it gets run down. And I think people kind of don't appreciate, they don't see the value in it, maybe because it's been there. And
Right.
so I think that's the hard part, is getting people to see the value in the things around them.
Right.
And I think if we get to that point, then it should be accessible to anyone.
Everyone.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think what happens right now is it seems, and I could be wrong too, it seems that the wealthier people seem to appreciate the
It
arts
more.
more than
Right.
maybe those people that are living it or seeing it day to day. I
Right.
think you lose that, like what makes it valuable.
what is so fascinating, I'll tell you a story. So we were in Jaipur. This is like years ago. You know, these days they have these blankets that make it that you can adjust to your body temperature. It make
Yes.
it cold and hot, right?
Yeah.
In there, we have had this for like years, where we actually got it imported from India. This is like years ago.
Right.
It was that easy to us to get it. They would just courier it to us.
Yeah.
We finalized everything, but because of the weight restrictions to bring it here, we just got it like boxed, cargo to us.
Cargo.
And those blankets are freaking amazing. They
I have one too.
in summer we still have it, and we, of course, I want to obviously tell my kids as well. You know, look at this. It's so simple, but you try to sleep in it when its room is hot. It will kind of make you feel like
Yeah.
nice and
Cool. Yeah.
And then when you sleep like during very cold, it'll make you feel like nice and warm and cozy.
Yeah.
We would pay so much for that, but you will not go and do that to
Right.
push and kind of represent.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes, and that's very frustrating sometimes. And even I understand the value of like a art, like a well-known artist or somebody that's, more famous. But I feel like sometimes even it's somebody that's not well-known made something,
Right.
from scratch, should have the same, value.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and I know that's not the reality of it because it's, and so even when I'm designing, I like to mix. If somebody wants something that's more well known from like a well known artist,
Right.
I don't think that the room should just be filled with those type of artists. I try to mix, everyday art too.
Right. If again, I want to know more, because if I'm going to approach you for, let's say, some kind of an interior, like, do you have like any, okay, if you have to do this, then I can help you. Or I can just gain you a couple of like, ornaments or couple of like things that you can put in your room and we change your room.
Yeah. Sometimes, yeah. So it depends on, like, sometimes it's already a furnished room and you don't want to replace any furniture. It's just a matter of what color what should I do to the walls?
Okay.
Something as simple as that. Sometimes people want to just start from scratch. And then, then it's like, okay, it's a blank slate. So then it's a whole different ball game. And then there's times where people will want to keep a few items that they have. They don't want to replace maybe, a bed or something like that. So then it's, how do you rework that into whatever style you want? So that's, those are like the...
So you give consultation for smallest of the things. So everything you provide consultation for.
Yes. So I exactly. So if it's a room, if it's, what do they want done in that room?
Okay. And what about like getting those pieces here or having them? You help with that as well?
I try to. If I have vendors that I know or artists that I know that curated in India or from here, then I get those sources for them. So,
Okay.
Yeah, I do need, I would love to broaden that scope. So that
Network.
Network would be nice.
Do you go to India after every few years to start or try and see what's new now, even within the old heritage part? What's new?
I do, and so I do. I try to go every few years, and I think for me, like, the creativity in India is unmatched. I'm sure, like and you being a creative person. When I'm there, I feel like creating more
The craftsmanship and everything is incredible.
Yeah, and it's always pushing certain boundaries, and so I always feel inspired when I go there. So when I'm there, I'm looking at everything from architecture to even just what's selling in just like street shops to the gallery. I try to see what's everything in between.
It's really incredible. Have you seen the Robbinsville BAPS temple?
Yes.
Inside that main temple,
Yeah.
the craftsmanship on that marble,
Yeah.
it's incredible. Like, attention to the detail,
Yes.
it blows my mind.
Yeah.
How creative people are.
Yeah. Even just the visitor hall,
That's the way they have created it. So much of like time, care, and love goes into building something that, and they say that none of these pieces, they're like thousands of them. None of them are similar. So
Right.
they say there are differences in every single piece.
Right.
which is, think about it, it's crazy.
It is, yeah. So that's, yeah, unbelievable. You know,
And I think, I don't know if I might be wrong, or I think, but they have been carved with the hands, right?
yeah, I think
They have not used any machine to. I don't know if they have used.
I don't
any
know if the tools. I think they may have had machine tools.
Okay.
So
Yeah, machine tools are fine, but like they have been not used anything like,
like
okay,
a
I'm going to put in
mold or something. Yeah, I don't think so. I think
Yeah.
they're all been carved. Yeah.
which is spectacular to see. And then, and India is filled with all this.
Yeah, yeah. Every corner, you
Yeah.
know, and even places. You know, I love that even contemporary places like cafes and stuff are
Right.
so creative. You know, just the interiors there are even creative. So it doesn't have to be so traditional, but just the creativity is everywhere.
Right.
And I really miss that here, especially on the East Coast. You know, I feel like the homes sometimes are just, they all look the same and
Right.
they're all painted the same, you know, colors.
No, and yeah, I hear you. Sometimes I miss it too, because like having cafes which are like, which could have like that value.
Yeah.
That you sit with a friend,
Yeah.
or with your cousins and just sit
Yeah,
and
of course,
talk.
that's a whole nother, yeah.
It brings a lot of value back, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about one more thing. So when, let's say, with all this modernization that is happening, and you know, all these changes that are happening, you feel like the generations are going to be able to carry this, because they are so influenced by, like, in India, influenced by the West people have not seen that much of India.
Right. So I think it'll be challenging. But I think I mentioned earlier, I do see a segment of people that are really kind of leaning into the arts that were there, especially arts that are dying out. You know, they really are trying to promote and make them more I don't want to say trendy, but popular with all ages and new generation and things like that. So
Right.
you know, I do see there being a push, and I see people getting interested. And I think you mentioned like pitchwai art. You know, that's been around for centuries, but
Right.
recently I feel like there's been even a more resurgence to see it in more modern context. But I think that's piqued people's interest, and they're looking, you know, discovering it and all of that.
Right. And then trying to take it like to the new levels.
Right, exactly. And you know, maybe the techniques are the same, but the composition may feel more modern or something.
Right. Where do you see Desi Meets Design going from here?
So I would like to, you know, continue to do more client work, you know, just kind of starting out in that realm. But then I also you know, I just love sharing things that other people get inspired by on a bigger platform. So
Right.
I've been dabbling with the idea of doing more longer form content and really getting into like the tutorials.
Okay. Okay.
So that's
coming up.
So I said 2026. I would hope to, you know, get that.
Do you ever get selfish and be like, okay, I found this idea, you know, I don't want to share with like my contemporaries, because I want to be the first person who puts it on the. Do you ever feel? It doesn't have to be bad. It's a good thing, right? Because
you want to protect
your own
IP,
thought and creativity as well.
That's true. Yeah. So let's say maybe not.
Are you a believer that sharing can increase my?
I do. You know, and
in art.
I do believe that. You know, and I think you know, there was one of the pieces I created early on that ended up being picked up by other people and then being mass produced by others. So it was like one of the like Joroka pieces I created. And but like the people that know, they always know where it came from, and they always tell me that, you know,
right,
we saw that and we know where it started. So that's fine.
I don't know. And so I had one quick I don't know, let's just have fun with it, okay? Okay, I'm going to give you another opportunity to maybe fix your own. That's just a few questions, quick questions.
Okay.
It's fire. What do you feel, okay? One color that always looks premium. You already said orange rustic, but like color that looks premium, like people can normally go to.
I like teal blue too.
One DIY tool everyone should have or own.
Pencil. Maybe.
Pencil, okay.
How about hot glue gun.
Hot glue, okay. Best Indian decor item under $50.
I would say some decorated plates.
Plates.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Brass or wood?
That's a tough one. Brass.
Brass. One smell that makes a home feel like home.
What's that? Sorry.
One smell that makes a home feel like home.
Sandalwood, I think.
Okay. Controversy. What's your most controversial decor option or opinion?
Most controversial decor opinion. Too much isn't always the best.
Okay. Too much is always the best. Everyone says that when it comes to like when you go to an artist or a very experienced
Less
artist.
is more, right?
Less is more.
Yeah. I think you have to be. Yeah. I think everything has to have intention. You know,
Okay.
If something's there has to be an intention there, not just because you need it. There's a spot there.
So when you look at a room, if it's a modern art and you're to just put like a touch of like an Indian decor in there,
Yeah.
in the full of modern art,
Yeah.
what would you?
I think
What
it
do you
can
do there?
work.
What would you do there? Like, what would be like your one good, easy fix for somebody to do in a room?
I would say add a few, maybe 2 more Indian items in there.
Okay.
So like the rule of 3, have 3 of those things in the room, and I think
Okay.
it'll work fine. with
Awesome.
some art.
Awesome. Wonderful. I had a great time. I learned a lot today. So obviously, because I wanted to sort of try and also meet you as a person and sort of try
Yeah.
and get your story out. So,
Yeah, thank you.
how did you feel?
It was great. I'm glad I could share about the creative process and all of that. You know,
Yeah.
it's, people don't always see that behind the reels. So that's another thing I want to try to share more of the process.
Yeah.
You know, like from the beginning to the end. So
Right.
I think people like to see that too.
Yeah,
and
and
the,
we
the
were
fails also.
we were happy because like I told you, so you're probably one of the first artists who we got on, who could speak to a lot of like Indian culture and Indian art that and explain it in the best way. And there are terminologies that I wanted to also clarify, which I'm sure people will benefit from. And I'm hoping that people get to like get access to you now more, because one of the
Yeah.
big thing is it can be overwhelming when people are asking you, how to enter. Okay, one more thing I have to ask you about this. Okay, if people mostly in the US they rent their houses or apartments,
Right.
they doesn't have too much space or luxury or value, right? What kind of an advice can you give if they want to have that feel in a rental property, because you can't touch the walls much?
Yeah, you usually can't paint. I would say, invest in a few pieces, like art pieces that will go with you. That
Okay.
That you want to keep for longer.
Okay.
And then use those to decorate. Even some tabletop things that you can take with you. So
Right.
nothing permanent. Although now they have options to do like the removable decals on the wall and things like
Okay.
that.
Right.
That you could add a few things here and there and still make
Okay.
it look personal.
Awesome. Anything final, Mitesh?
No, thank you for having me. This was
No,
fun.
absolutely. And for the folks, thank you so much for dialing in this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I had a great time talking to Mitesh and trying to understand what Desi Meets Design stands for. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next episode. Until then, this is your host, Halak, and you just watched this episode on The Halak Show. Signing off.